I've made that mistake once before, and I don't make the same mistake twice.
What is one maybe tease for one of those three fights?
I think you're going to get a conclusion to a story that has been ongoing for a little while, and a new story will be birthed. I think is definitely going to be in Qatar, and I'll leave it at that for now. That was one of my favorite fights ever on Misfits. We're going to see that again. You don't want to miss this. You want to see this.
Hello and welcome back to Misfits News, now live on YouTube and DAZN. I'm your host, as always, Ben the Bane Davis, joined by my co-host, BL. We've got the latest, greatest updates from the world of crossover combat sports. But before we get into all of that, BL, how are you?
Ben, I'm doing great. It's great to have you on once again. And we've got some huge exclusives coming later this episode. But first, let's get into today's topics. We're going to be talking about Alex Wassabi calling out Deji on Twitter. DAZN have revealed how many events we're going to be doing next year. And to finish the episode off, we have the latest and the greatest exclusives coming from Mams Taylor himself.
Fantastic. Well, let's get into the first one. Michelangelo tweeted about Deji ducking Alex Wassabi. Alex responded to this tweet, actually, and gave us his perspective. BL, what was his stance on this?
Well, Alex actually responded by saying he had 6 fights and still needs a warm-up fight against someone with 3 fights. Now, he makes a great point there. However, the fights were very longed out, if that makes sense. He hasn't fought in a long time, Deji. I think the last time we saw him out was against Swarms, I believe, on the KSI card. Am I wrong by saying that?
Are you asking me?
I believe it was
the top of my head. I'm
Swarms.
not entirely sure. Yeah.
So it's been a long time out for Deji since the last time he has been boxing. So I do believe him coming in and going against potentially an easier opponent than Alex Wassabi is the right move. However, next year we do need to see him versus Alex Wassabi. There should be no debate about that.
Yeah, I don't hate the fact that he wants to tune up and he wants to, again, shake off the ring rust. That's perfectly fine. But I think what would have been excellent is if they found space for Alex Wassabi on the Qatar card against somebody of the same competition caliber that Deji's fighting, right? Because then you have this natural storyline throughout fight week of them being in the same location. On fight night, their results will either inform us if the trajectory has finally brought us to the rematch or takes us further away, right? So I don't know. I think that the smartest thing would have been maybe finding a fight for Alex Wassabi and then, boom, there we go. They both compete on the same night. Therefore, they'll get the same amount of recovery time. Therefore, there's no excuses from either end. I think if Deji gets an easy fight on the Qatar card and doesn't fight Alex Wassabi next, that'd be a little problematic.
Well, I want to switch gears slightly and look into the new year, 2025. And the DAZN VP of Marketing, Alfie Sharman, has announced that Misfits will be doing 8 events next year. Ben, what's your stance on that?
I think it's fantastic. I think 8 events is a really good number for us to strive for to hit. And that's just X Series, right? So only 8 X Series events next year. And I know some fans might be a little bit sad about it. They think 8's a small number, but when you really think about it, with 6 weeks of separation between each event, that leaves only like 1 month of the year that won't have a Misfits event. So I don't know. I think 8's perfect. I think it gives us amount of time for each buildup, for all the fighters to really have some fun marketing and promotional tools and tactics. Yeah, 8's better than a lot of other places. So to me, 8's good.
My stance on it is quality over quantity. Would you rather loads of shitty events? Would you rather loads of smaller card events? Or would you rather 8 really jam-packed, high, big action fights? For me, that's what I'd rather. And time to properly build that up as well. Gives us time to build the cards up. Gives us time to do the documentaries that you're looking for and create those storylines. So I think it's possibly the best thing going forwards.
Well, talking about moving forward, let's move into the exclusives that we got from Mams Taylor, all things X Series. Let's hear what he had to say. Ladies and gentlemen, Thursday, November 28th, it is the Qatar Supercard, so it only makes sense to bring to the Misfits news booth the man who put it all together. Mams Taylor, how are we doing, sir?
I'm great. I'm rearing to go. I can't wait for this card. It's super exciting. 50-50 fight after 50-50 fight. So many consequences for the winner and the loser. Listen, it's on Thanksgiving, and I give thanks that we're able to watch these fights. I'll tell you right now, like, I don't think there's going to be any turkeys on the card.
Let's hope, man. Maybe this is something that can be consistent year after year. I know that we got bumped to the Thursday due to existing commitments, but hey, they've got Thanksgiving football games. They don't have Thanksgiving boxing matches.
Hey, there's a first for everything. And at the end of the day, I think our audience is so invested with some of these fights. When I knew that the Supercard was on the horizon, long before it was confirmed, I put a tweet out and said, what are some fights you guys want to see outside of KSI and Jake Paul? And the top answer by a landslide was Slim versus Gib. To make that come to fruition finally, jumping through many hurdles, making sure we can get this to actually happen, it's a true delight. I mean, who's going to win? Slim's been working on his cardio. Gib is a cardio machine. The longer it goes, I'm stating the obvious, but the more cardio will play into this. And neither of them have gone that deep. 8-round fight. I think this is
the longest ever Misfits fight.
It's the longest ever Misfits fight. So it's going to be very interesting. There's really bad blood between them. They dislike each other, and it didn't start that way. It started very respectfully.
You spoke about some of the hurdles that were associated with this matchup. Can you maybe elaborate on the challenge of pulling this off and finally booking it?
I'm not going to go into detail, but
Sure.
I'll just say that it looked like it was an impossibility more than a few times. Both Gib and us, we had to compromise and come to a balance and make it work. And I think the fans deserve this fight. So I did whatever it took to make that happen. And I think everyone, including Slim, has made compromises. Look, he's the champion, and yet he's not gonna. Gib is the A side. And that's not an easy thing to make happen. And I salute Slim for saying, you know what, I want this fight bad enough that I'm going to make it happen. And I respect that he did that. The most important thing is that we're here. We've got the fight. It's going to happen. It's going to be an absolute banger.
Amen. And that's it. The Misfits trademark. We get it done. Now, I want to talk about and move the conversation to some people that maybe aren't on the card that at one point were attached to it. The biggest name, of course, Dillon Danis. What happened to this clash that I think was supposed to be against HS Tiki Taki?
Dillon probably shouldn't be boxing unless he puts time into boxing, and I don't think it excites him. This is my personal opinion. I think he's definitely a massive draw. He's a big star. He should be doing what he's great at, which is MMA. And you don't get to do that in a boxing match. You don't get to put someone in a heel hook. You don't get to do an anaconda choke or any of that stuff. I think it's smart for him to stick to what he's great at. But if he wanted that fight, it was there. It's not a matter of ducking. It's more like if you're a great tennis player and you're going to play the paddleball world champion and the stakes are high, you're going to be at a disadvantage. He's excellent at jiu-jitsu and he can apply that in his MMA game. But with boxing, that's taken away his number one weapon. He's got to go to battle without his tank. And HS is a beast, his timing. And this is all from being a 10-year-old karate champion. It's stuck with him, and he understands timing, and he's got a vicious right hand and a very hard-hitting left hand as well. So it might not have been the smartest, but HS was, Dillon said, I'll fight him in MMA. And HS said, I'll do both. Let's do one boxing, one MMA. And it just really never progressed from there, to be honest with you.
Fair. I want to ask about a screenshot that you had posted with some, black highlighting that, you were trying to block out some matchups, but then the fans outsmarted you.
Or did they?
Or was it on purpose? You looked ahead of time.
double whammy. But what was your reaction when you saw them, changing the exposure and the saturation and seeing what was beneath the black lines?
I've made that mistake once before.
Yeah.
Okay. And I don't make the same mistake twice. And let's go to the next question.
We can't talk about any of the potential ones that were uncovered, or
we can talk about them. That was a list that was made, and we only had a limited amount of fights we could put on the Supercard. Not every single one came to fruition, but there's some good ones that haven't been announced yet. We're waiting for some of the processes that are a little beyond our control, but once all that's done, we can announce, and I'm looking forward to announcing hopefully one, two, three more fights,
Oh, wow.
To the Supercard?
Yeah, three more fights for the Supercard, and also obviously Deji's opponent as well. So we'll make that announcement all together as soon as we're able to.
What is one maybe tease for one of those three fights? If you could stir the pot on either one matchup or one of the boxers in one of those three fights.
I think you're going to get a conclusion to a story that has been ongoing for a little while, and a new story will be birthed.
Really?
So it is Ben the Bane versus Gabe Silva too. I knew it. I knew it was coming.
Hey, you tell me when you're ready for that rematch.
I don't think Gabe, after that last performance as well, would ever want to step into the ring with Ben Davies again. You mentioned the name Deji earlier. Everyone's had so many questions about who's his opponent going to be, when's he going to be fighting, when's it going to be announced. Could you give us a little bit exclusive there? Could you let us know what's going on behind the scenes right now?
Deji and I spoke, and we mapped out his future, and he's like, look, I really want to fight Wassabi, but I want to shake the ring rust off. It means too much to me to have my redemption arc. This is going to be him getting rid of his ring rust. And his challenge is going to be fun. I can't wait to introduce him to the world of Misfits. But ultimately, if Deji can pull off a win, then that's a big fight for us to look forward to. Is that was the second most requested fight on my tweet. It was Deji Wassabi. And hopefully the timing works out for both Deji and Alex, and we can run that back again. And that'll be a main event on its own for sure.
It does sound like Fez Batista has slided into the role against Deji.
Hey, Fez is up for anything.
Exactly. I do want to ask about that because Joey Essex, obviously the original opponent, pulled out, and I believe it occurred on that media day, press conference day. Can you walk us through how it fell apart and maybe the dissolving of that original matchup?
It would have been an interesting match because I think Joey would have brought vindictive and angry and more fun to watch side of Deji, engaging in sort of going back and forth and actually fueling that fire inside Deji. So I think Joey would have brought that out because he's a great shit talker. And if Deji's on form, he can be too. But he can also be very chill and more relaxed. And I liked that fight for that reason. And Joey, although he hasn't fought, he's from a boxing family and he's been in and out of boxing gyms for his whole life. I think that would have been the perfect opponent that would get the attention that we wanted from mainstream in the UK. And ultimately, who knows, down the line, it could still happen. But I think for Joey, it's fair enough to think maybe he was biting off a little bit more than he can chew. And if he gets one or two fights in, that's something for the future for sure. But Joey Essex versus Bryce Hall, Joey Essex versus... There's other matches to make as well. I actually... There's a couple of others, but I'm not going to say because I almost gave you guys a spoiler, but I'm being careful.
Now, when you spoke to Deji the other day on the phone and he landscaped over what he wants to do, what he wants to achieve with Misfits Boxing, well, other than the Alex Wassabi fight, was there any other details he gave you? Is there any other ambitions he wants to go for next year?
He's kind of a one step at a time type guy, but I think we all wanted to see Deji versus Wassabi more than any other fight that Deji could have. So I stress the importance of that, and I want Deji to fulfill his potential, and I want Deji to be the best version of Deji that he can be. But wanting that has to coincide with Deji putting in the work and also wanting that. I think we're getting to that point, and hopefully if Deji can see what his potential is, he'll want to fulfill it. And that's kind of the vibe we're on with Dej. I think he could... He hasn't spoken about like, oh, I want to be Misfits World Champ or anything like that yet. But I think once he gets a taste of that and he puts the work in and he starts living up to his potential as a boxer, I think he could definitely be a contender. And I said this maybe a year and a half ago. I said, if Deji trains like his brother, I think he's a big threat to anyone in the 165 division, you know? But that's an if that he's got to carry on his shoulders.
I want to talk about Danny Aaron's for a brief moment. He had a clip that gained a bit of traction where he said, "Hey, I'll go get knocked out by Deji for the right price. There just wasn't the right offer." Can you maybe talk about your side of chatting with Danny about maybe stepping in?
Look, we love Danny, and at one point it was a conversation, but it didn't last for very long. I think it's important for Danny to stay motivated, and he's a big asset for us on this scene. I don't think it's something that anyone wants is for Danny to go in there and get fed to the lions. But
Yeah.
at the same time, I'm not sure. Maybe Danny would surprise us, because honestly, when I spoke to his coach, he was like, Danny can beat Deji. It's a bit of a risk to put Danny in there because we're trying to build him. And if the timing is right, where everything feels fair and he's had more experience, then him against Deji would be massive. It'd be great. But let's keep building Danny up and giving him opportunities to fight against people where he has at least a 50-50% chance against. If Danny goes in there and gets absolutely slaughtered by Deji, that might make him lose his motivation. Right now, he's motivated, and I want to keep him motivated. So it's something we can build for the future.
Last one on Danny. There was obviously in that screenshot. I know I'm keeping you on the fire in this one. He was in that. His manager had posted on LinkedIn something about, hey, heavy indication Aaron's is competing. Can you comment on those two things and the possibility of Danny Aaron still being on the Supercard, maybe?
Wait, LinkedIn?
There was his manager posted something in like a pitch deck that
I don't know.
Danny...
I've never been on LinkedIn in my life. Actually, I set up a profile and never. Remember, I'm the unprofessional one. LinkedIn is for professionals. I don't go on LinkedIn. Okay.
Fair enough.
Look, it never got that far, unfortunately. There was talk a couple of times. There was even a bit of fun about potential other opponents. And I think Danny is definitely going to be in Qatar, and I'll leave it at that for now.
Oh, wow.
All right.
Danny in Qatar, I can't wait to see it. But there was an interview you did very recently, and you spoke about the Misfits Awards happening in the Q1 in January on a fight week. Now, Mams, I don't know whether that's confirmations of Misfits 20 potentially in January next year.
It's looking good, yeah. I'm getting the schedule together, putting some absolute banger fights together for next year. I think 25 will be our best year. Like, some big monster fights coming.
What gives you that indication that it's going to be the best year? What's one of the things that's getting you most excited?
The phone calls every day for hours upon hours, making these things happen with the team and with Kala, us tag teaming certain matches and certain fights that we're working on. Everyone's going to be in for a treat. That's look, I don't want to keep saying I can't give anything away, but I really can't. So I don't want to spoil the surprise. But there are some fun fights coming next year. Some big names, a lot of fun. I think it's definitely going to be our best year and high level of competition.
Well, one of those big names is obviously KSI, which he has stated he's going to be fighting in Q1 next year. Is this still the case? Is this still what's going on?
Q1 sounds about right, yeah.
Sounds about right. Now, another thing that may sound about right, and I'm not sure if you saw it on the headlines this week, was Tommy Fury apparently dropped out of I'm a Celebrity because he was offered a lucrative offer to rematch KSI. Now, when I saw that, I got excited. Now, Mams, what's going on here?
I'll repeat what I said to the publication. I think it was The Sun. I was asked if KSI and Tommy Fury will have a rematch, and I said I think it's definitely something that's on the cards potentially in the future, and that's really all I said. So make of that what you will.
Fair. Now, we have obviously a couple fighters that were rumored to join Misfits. Let's start it off with Bobby Lashley, who's gaining so much attention in the last few weeks for this move. When can we expect this to happen?
It's an ongoing conversation. I think that would be. I think Bobby would be great for a US pay-per-view, especially against a monster name like Batista or someone equivalent to that. So. It's ambitious, but it's possible. Myself and Bobby, and also myself and his manager, we've had some good conversations, and and let me cook.
All right, we'll let you cook. Last one on Bobby. Were there names that he maybe expressed to you, people that he put on your table saying, hey, I'd actually like to fight this person, or maybe this matchup would make sense?
No, I think the potential of the Batista one excited him for sure. But there were other names that we went through, and like I say, I think it's quite likely that Bobby fights for us next year. And yeah, let me not spoil the surprise of the short list that we have together.
Shifting gears to the pros, right? The pro division has been a big integration this year. Amir Anderson, what a fantastic debut he had. Slinging Sammy from Miami, Prince Nassim Hamid's son, getting it done in Dublin. What is sort of the angle for the pro division in 2025? Can you maybe elaborate some bigger plans?
Yeah. So just so we're clear, um, Sammy Hamid is not a pro.
Oh, so he's not considered in that same category. Okay.
Bro, that was his first ever fight. Amateur,
It was such a good
professional.
performance. We considered him pro at that
Wow.
point.
He's got a legend of a dad, and he's got the gift of the gab as well as some of the boxing ability from his dad. So he's a Misfits superstar for sure, like on the
Yeah.
horizon, and I see him having a big future. But it would be very unfair to group him in with the pros because
He's not
hey,
like, sure. Okay. Yeah,
it's
absolutely.
not his fault he's good, but he hasn't
Yeah. No.
like it's not like he's had a single amateur fight before or a pro fight or anything like
Right.
that. He's just spent time in the gym and grown up with his father, who's, one of the most entertaining and greats, of our time growing up. And I think Sammy's got a bright future, but maybe he'll end up in the pros at some point. But I think he's got a lot of fun ahead of him with Misfits in the 155 division. He's very versatile as well. And
Yeah.
he's talked about going to 135. 155, 135, and even going up to 165. So I think we'll decipher what the best weight for him is in the next couple of fights. But I'm excited to see him again for sure.
Same.
Amir Anderson, future world champion. I have no doubt. I mean, he's 1-0. Yeah. So it's early days, but the guy is he's really special. And speaking of special, we have Jahan Ingram, who didn't get to show out and show just how special he is. And he just had a death in the family days before the fight, and still soldiered on and said it was a very last minute addition. And I'm not one to make excuses for anyone, but honestly, he's very hungry and he's fighting on a Wasserman show that's coming up. I'd say definitely watch it because you're going to see the real Jahan Ingram. And again, another future world champion. There are some future fights I'd like to make for him. And then we have our first MF Pro champion in Dylan Price. He's a silver WBC champion, and he just won that title on his last fight. And he's definitely a future world champ as well. I mean, this guy, I think he needs a few more fights, and then the big names roll on to them because he's very special as well. These guys, they're all really, really humble, hungry, and hardworking, and I can't wait to carry on building the roster for the Misfits Pro.
I've got two last questions on the pro side of things. First one, with Jahan Ingram, like you mentioned, he's got the Wasserman bout coming up. Is that a relationship that we can expect from the Misfits Pros in the future, right? They'll just kind of bounce between both? Or is there ever going to be like hey, you were signed to Misfits Pro division, you'll be exclusively platformed here? What is the dynamic maybe to be expected?
I'm open for anything that makes sense for them.
Sure.
They're Misfits Pros. If we're doing Misfits Pro shows, they're going to be fighting on those shows for sure. But when there's co-promotions and bigger, the bigger fights involved that have other promoters, we're not going to let politics get in the way of enhancing their career. I want to make sure that these guys can fight the big fights ultimately. So yes, we can build them up on Misfits Pro, and when it's time to do co-promotion with someone else, be it Bob Arum, Eddie Hearn, or Wasserman, or anyone else, if it makes sense, we'll do it. And also, if for some reason there's no show during the month that they would like to fight, and we find another spot for them on a Wasserman show, then no biggie. I just want to keep them active and I want to keep them winning. I think you've got to think open-mindedly, and I've done this with
Mhm.
Misfits in general as well. Contracted fighters, I've had no problem with them fighting in Mexico, fighting on smaller shows, stay active. Salt Pappy and Fox, I totally encourage them. Actually, I set up their fight in Dubai. So I made the call and then I called them and said, "Hey guys, do you want to have this fight in Dubai? I think it'll be good for you to stay active." So I think everything is possible respectfully. Hey, listen, I even said okay to Whindersson fighting on the Netflix show with MVP, and Whindersson, to be honest, they came and asked in such a respectful way, and he's such a lovely guy that I'm not gonna let my personal feelings for Nikisa get in the way of someone's career. As long as things are done the right way, I'm always open-minded. It's just when things are done disrespectfully and backstabbing and shit like that I'm like, no,
And it's a level of collaboration and working across the aisle that, again, we just don't normally see in traditional boxing. So the last question I have for the pro divisions is, how does Idris Virgo work into all of this? He has the pro belt. What is kind of the expectation from him in 2025? Is there going to be defenses of it? Is that just a novelty item for that
No,
event?
he is the first Misfits Pro champion, and he really, really is proud of that belt.
Yeah.
And he's going to have to step up against all kinds of challengers, and mostly from the pro world. I mean, they're all going to be from the pro world, unless one of our guys fancies crossing over into that, you know. So he knows he's got a huge target on his back. I speak to all kinds of pros who are DMing me all the time about this, and he's going to have to fend off their challenges and really put that zero on the line, because I'm going to see to it that that title has a lot of esteem and prestige, and things take time to build. He did well. He won a tournament. He won 2 fights in one night. And as we move forward, he's going to have to face some hot competition.
Talking about that, there's a guy named Martin Farrow, I believe, that might have been originally slated in that quarterfinal or semifinal,
Yeah.
rather. Is that the first defense against Martin?
I don't know. I got to check on Martin's hand, because Martin was
Yeah.
all but signed to do that tournament. And then Idris's pathway would have been a lot different. That's a hell of a challenge to overcome. And Martin is very good. That's a 50-50 fight. Who knows how it would have ended up. But yeah, I think that's a fight for the future. I really like Martin. I think he'd be great on Misfits Pro. And we'll set that fight up soon.
Well, talking about challenges in the pro world, Charlie Parsons has now been looking to make a Misfits debut. Now, Mams, can you talk me through what's going on there?
Charlie he's great. He's a lot of fun, and I love the banter between him and Eddie Hearn. I love it. It's really funny. And Eddie gives him a lot of stick, and sometimes rightly so. Parsons, I think he's got something in him where he wants to prove that, look, I could do this as well. And I respect that. And I think he'll bring a different audience in. So why not? Let's see how he fares. We'll get him on Misfits next year.
He mentioned that
Well, you say
someone
next
ducked him
year.
on the Qatar card. Did someone duck it?
No, I don't think it was a matter of ducking. I just think it didn't make as much sense as maybe we thought in the first place. What is the definition of ducking? Ducking someone is like, oh shit, I don't want to fight him. I'm scared to fight him, right? I don't know that anyone really says that. Very few people say that in our scene. I'll be like, oh, this isn't right, that's not right, and so on and so forth. Other times, there are also legitimate reasons why the fight doesn't make sense. If you can't agree on certain circumstances and so on and so forth, then it is what it is.
Now, one of the last things we want to talk about is Alfie Sharman spoke about 8 events in 2025. Does that sound about right to you, more or less expected?
Yeah, it could be. I mean, I think there's Misfits Pro, and of course, you guys know that MMA is going to make its debut next year. So obviously, maybe there'll be just 8 Misfits shows. And then other pro shows and MMA shows as well. So let's see what it brings. But yeah, it's going to be a hell of a year, that's for sure.
Can you maybe reveal some of the locations you guys are looking at to host different events for 2025, but the fans can expect Misfits to go to?
We're definitely going back to Dublin. at some point
Yep.
next year. Obviously, UK, US, potentially looking at Cali,
Okay.
and another international supercard show as well.
Love it. In Qatar again, or depending on
Let's
how this goes?
let's see. But I'm working on it.
Now, to sign off the episode, Mams, I'd love to give your final words to the fans at home waiting to see us in Qatar in the next couple of weeks' time.
You don't want to miss this. Thanksgiving, no Thanksgiving, whether you're in America, England, Timbuktu, you want to see this. It's bringing up the feeling of old school YouTube boxing. And there's still some new school elements that are being added, but it's the battle of the Middle Eastern beasts. And I've put votes out twice, 75% choosing Gib, 25% Slim. Both times. I think it's a 50-50 fight. I think it's really a 50-50 fight. I've watched both of them fight numerous times. I've watched all of their fights. It's so much on the line. You got those two with all that on the line, as well as the title. Then you've got Salt Pappy versus King Kenny. That's another 50-50 fight. Both of them have technical abilities that are fantastic. How are they going to dance together? Who's going to end up winning? Will there be a KO? Both really hungry to redeem themselves from previous losses, which they have been, on that right trajectory now. And then Jay Swingler against Nick LMAO. That was one of my favorite fights ever on Misfits. We're going to see that again. What will be different? I can't wait to see, Then again, another fight of the night contender, Jarvis, the champ, versus Ben Williams, who is an extraordinarily tough challenge. He wants to have that belt so he can defend it when we do our Dublin show. He's motivated. He wants to be the champion. He's wanted Jarvis. Jarvis is tough, and I think that he doesn't get the credit he deserves for how much he's improved over time as well. And I think this is a chance for him to make that statement and really become a fan favorite within our framework. But, Ben Williams has a different idea in mind. So you can't miss it. It's too many good fights. And how many times have I texted saying Jarvis versus Ben Davis instead of Ben Williams by mistake? And you called me up on that.
I have been unfortunately slated several times to fight Jarvis in the build up to this via WhatsApp.
Yeah, sorry about that.
But either way,
yeah, I'm excited. You've got to tune in. And thanks for having me, guys. I appreciate it as always.
We appreciate you,
Mams.
Mams.
It's always a pleasure having you on. Thank you so much, sir. And we cannot wait to chat with you after the Qatar Supercard. You simply can't miss it.
Well, it's great to have Mams on, and he really delve us into the world of Misfits and what's going to be happening next year. And also, something big that's happening this year in Qatar, 3 additional fights, Ben. What a number.
That's big. I mean, we're adding 3 fights to the Qatar Supercard. Gang, this event is just a couple weeks away, yet we are really adding to the runtime of Fight Night. And here's one of the exclusives is there's a story that's been ongoing that needs some conclusion. To me, BL, that kind of sounds like Dean the Great versus Waleed Sharks 3. I don't know about you, but that's a pretty ongoing story. Waleed gets the opportunity in the rubber match to bounce back.
I think it's either that or, for me, it's possibly one of the tournaments we have running on. I think that's possibly the storyline we might be concluding there. However, if it's not that, it must be a rivalry. And he even mentioned, I think, the person Deji was fighting is a new face as well to Misfits. So, to be honest, I have no clue. I am talking out my absolute arse here. I'm guessing. I know as much as you do. So, yeah, I'm excited to see how they unveil it and when we're going to see that announcement.
Yeah, it would be great to get Yuddy Gang and Cray Cray on that. It would be a lot of fun. Either way, what an episode of Misfits News, now on DAZN and YouTube. Always bringing you the latest and greatest updates. I've been your host, Ben the Bane Davis. For BL, we will see you guys next episode.